I'd now like to introduce some of the tools that we use for pruning, and I'll start off with low pruning. These are fairly old dated style Wilkinson swords that we used to use years ago for pruning pines. They're a bypass lopper, probably not seen much nowadays, but quite useful in their day. These largish bypass loppers, Sandvik pruners, have their limitations. I mean, the thing with these tools is that pruning tools are a personal thing. There's no set hard and fast rule about what type of gear you should use, and the point of this session is to just indicate some of the types of gear that's available. It's not by all a comprehensive list by a long shot, just to show an example of the type of tools we use. So moving along, we have these anvil type pruners. Again, long handles, you have to open them fairly wide, and by anvil pruning I mean that the cutter actually hits on an anvil base. They have their limitations in that quite often they leave a piece of bark behind on the prune stem. The next type of pruners are these also prune off bypass loppers, quite heavy duty, very useful, and can probably prune branches up to about 50 millimeters. So two types there. And the other way of taking branches off is with the hand saw or the jack saw. Again, these are quite useful for those really large branches. But with pruning, if you're taking large branches off, there's a good chance that you're probably a bit too late anyway. So that's some of the type of gear available for low pruning. Now we'll touch on some of the tools for high pruning. Now the conventional saw blade is this one, off the shelf, fairly pricey sort of equipment, but very adaptable. This one here is the handmade job with just a aluminium pipe that slots into a pool cleaning pole and using a fine tooth, very sharp blade. Okay, again when we're high pruning, that's taking branches off above 2.5 meters, there's an array of equipment that we use. Quite commonly we use the pole saws, and I'll just show you three types here now. There's this handmade job that can reach to about 7.5 meters from the ground. There's the off-the-shelf type model, which is this one here. That can reach to about 6 meters. And then there's the more expensive option, which is the chainsaw on a pole. Again, that can reach to about 6 meters as well. Fairly expensive and a little bit more cumbersome to use than the other equipment. The other commonly used method of high pruning is with a squirrel, an elevated platform, and that's fairly effective because you can get in quite close to the branch without causing too much damage. And then lastly we have a ladder, and we can use a jack saw and or the pruners to climb the tree and take them off that way. So the other tools in pruning that we use are the small light chainsaws. Models here, and the slightly heavier one there, which is also used for thinning and culling at the same time. Okay, I'd just like to demonstrate how we set up the New Zealand tree climbing ladder if you're going to prune off a ladder. It's a commonly used technique in the eastern states, but we don't tend to use it so much in Western Australia, although it does have its applications. This is the baby of the fleet. This one can reach to about 4 to 5 meters if it's put on a tree at a reasonable height, but you can actually buy longer versions of this that you can prune to 10 meters off. So I'll quickly demonstrate how it's set up on the tree. Hook goes around the back of the tree and then you pull down sharply. It's now gripping the tree. and put the chain around the back, tighten it on, and you'd normally be using a safety belt as you're off the ground. You'd need to have a safety belt setting yourself up as you climb the tree. And then we have the jack saw or the pruners, which you can just get up there and take the branches off. As with any job, it's really useful to keep your tools nice and sharp. Now, I wouldn't recommend sharpening your tools in the field, but just as an example to demonstrate here, we'd be using a stone and trying to keep that angle there nice and sharp and maintain that edge pretty well. The other thing is make sure you keep it oiled when you're finished, bit of CRC, and store it for next time you're ready to use it. Again, with a chainsaw, basic chainsaw is that we would probably touch up the chain every time that you use the saw, or fuel the saw, I should say, and probably every 3/4 of an hour, just to keep that gear operating fairly sharp. The other thing about chainsaws is make sure you clean that air filter fairly often if you're using it for long periods of time. Okay, with any job we do in the forest, it helps to have a safe and careful working relationship with the environment and the type of job you're doing. Tree pruning and thinning can be quite a dangerous job if you're not aware of all the implications of the hazards involved. So with that in mind, with the type of pruning, for example, there's certain pieces of equipment you'd need to use. One would be eye protection, and I have a piece of eye protection, I call them blowfly glasses. That it's not a fashion statement, but it keeps out all the sawdust, and when you're going into the tree to start your pruning, you can quite often have eye damage from branches that are outside your peripheral line of vision. So my advice is to wear glasses when you're pruning, and perhaps safety boots. When you're high pruning, I'd suggest you wear the glasses, the safety boots, probably wear things like helmet. It's pretty optional. It's pretty uncomfortable wearing a helmet when you're high pruning, but just be aware that there's branches coming down from a fairly high area of the tree that can cause a bit of damage. Now, when you get to using chainsaw, obviously there's things like the safety helmet, the face shield, and hearing protection, and I often wear gloves, good solid gloves, to protect your hands from the vibrations of the chainsaw and also sticks and sharp objects that you encounter in the bush. The other type of hearing protection besides the ear muffs is the ear plugs. Some guys prefer to wear these ones. So I think we have a duty of care when we're doing forestry operations, and my advice to most farmers or contract supervisors is that all the people wear the gear. And just to close, the other very important piece of equipment is using chainsaw chaps, which you can see I'm wearing these ones here. They have about 24 to 28 layers of mesh, which stops you getting serious accidents from chainsaws. The other thing that I'd recommend that anyone using a chainsaw goes to an accredited chainsaw training course, the basic chainsaw course, probably a day or so, and learn how you maintain the chainsaw and how to use it correctly. Things like cross-cutting, undercutting, pruning the right way around the tree, and things like that. You'll pick up immense knowledge from doing a course. We generally don't let our guys use chainsaws at all without doing an accredited course. Okay, any landowner that wishes to undertake commercial farm forestry using commercial species needs to be aware of the protocol set out by the Department of Environment and Conservation under the clearing legislation. If, for example, a farmer wishes to sell firewood or timber, they need to procure a commercial producer's licence from the DEC. Under the general guidelines, though, if you indicate in your original planting program that you are doing this for farm forestry, you'll generally be covered from an exemption. But having said that, you will need to apply for a commercial producer's licence if you wish to sell timber. Okay, so just to conclude today's session, I'd just like to re-emphasise the importance of the timing of pruning and thinning. Try and get those jobs done on time. If you want to improve your tree planting project, pruning and thinning is a form of value adding. The other thing is with the equipment, we tend not to buy off-the-shelf type equipment. Although the range of equipment is fairly versatile, my advice to potential growers is to buy the more expensive types of gear. The cheaper ones don't tend to last long, as forestry is a fairly rough and tumble business, and I'd suggest that you try and purchase the upper market price range for gear. Farm forestry also is about what I call commercial land care. We can still grow trees for windbreaks and erosion control, salinity control, like we are here at Ian's site. By pruning and thinning, it just is another form of value adding, and it does enhance the overall value of your land care or farm forestry project.